Thank you. I would like to call to order the Tuesday, September 14th, 2021 Housing and Redevelopment Authority meeting. First order of business is call to order and the roll call. Myra, could you do the roll call?
Beloga.
Here.
Hooking. Olson.
Here.
Lewis.
Here.
Thorson.
Here.
Let the record note that Vicki Hookim is not present tonight. There is a quorum of commissioners.
Thank you.
Chair Lewis,
Yes.
I'm
Commissioner Olson?
without an appendage if I don't have a pen. Can you ask if somebody has an extra?
Does someone have an extra pen?
We'll get you one.
I got one.
Well, I can learn how to deal with it.
Oh, wait a minute. I have, this works. It's a pencil, but
All right.
it works.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Okay, now that we know you have a writing utensil, our second item on the agenda is approval of the agenda. Are there any additions or questions about the agenda? Hearing none, is there a motion to approve the agenda?
Thorson here, I move to approve the agenda.
Beloga, second.
Thank you. So it has been moved by Commissioner Thorson, seconded by Commissioner Beloga to approve the agenda. May we have the roll call vote, please?
Beloga.
Aye.
Lewis.
Aye.
Olson.
Aye.
Thorson.
Aye.
Motion passed 4-0.
Thank you. Moving on to number 3, approval of the minutes of August 24th, 2021. Are there any additions or corrections to the minutes? Hearing none, do I hear a motion to approve the minutes of August 24th, 2021?
Chair Lewis, Commissioner Olson moves that we approve the minutes of August 20.
Thank you.
23rd or 24th?
24th.
Thank you. I made a mistake.
Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. It has been moved by Commissioner Olson, second by Commissioner Thorson to approve the minutes of August 24th, 2021. May we have the roll call vote, please?
Beloga.
Abstain. I was not present.
Thank you. You sure you weren't at that meeting? Oh, that's right, you weren't. Lewis.
Aye.
Olson.
Aye.
Thorson.
Aye.
The motion passed 3-0 with Beloga abstaining.
Thank you. All right, we are now moving on to our organizational business. Item 4.1 is the proposed 2022 HRA budget. May we have the staff report, please?
Yes, hi, thank you. Erica Coleman, HRA Administrator. And so we're bringing the budget overview to you today for review and discussion. And we would bring it back at the next meeting to
Typically, we bring it back in December.
December,
Or,
sorry.
excuse me, November.
November. I knew it wasn't right away,
Yeah.
but, come on. We'll bring it back in November for request for approval. So we just want to review and discuss it today, just make sure you're aware. So for the 2022 preliminary operating budget, it is $10,554,247 is what staff is proposing. And it shows an increase of $542,820, which is 5% from the 2021 budget. And this increase is due to, primarily due to federal funding for the Housing Choice Voucher Program, as well as the HRA levy. We'll receive the information from Hennepin County. And so the HRA levy is at 0.0185%, and the HRA levy authority to be requested at this time will increase from $2,654,532 to $2,718,683 as determined by Hennepin County. This increase is due to an increase in property market values, and this is the maximum levy amount set by the statutory cap of 0.0185%. So the median medium valued home, will experience a minimal tax increase of 37 cents from $3.65 per month to $4.02. And so below, I have used the format that Brian Hartman has brought forward many times to outline the information of the budget. And so we'll start with our general administration. This is for the operations of the HRA, including administrative functions unrelated to specific programs. And so we are proposing increasing the payment for nonprofits for administration support from $5,000 per nonprofit to $10,000. And those nonprofits are Oasis for Youth, Housing Link, Bridging, and BEAT. So we have typically done $5,000, and we're proposing to increase it to $10,000.
Erica, is that a per nonprofit or is that an aggregate amount?
That is per nonprofit.
I just wanted to clarify. That's
absolutely.
what my memory said, but.
Yep,
And
absolutely.
just those four?
Just, those are the four that we have done the administrative support for, so it's just those four, yes. All right. Next is development. And so in development, this is the redevelopment activities done by the HRA. And so levy dollars will be spent on activities such as the Knox and American project. As you know, we still have 1801 American that we have, I want to say, development rights with Stewart Co. and United Properties on that property, but we own it, but they still have development rights. And then it also includes support for senior community services, home energy squad programs, which includes, from last year, there was a new pilot program of air sealing and insulation. We're offering to continue the support for that program. It was pilot last year, so this will be the second pilot this year. This will be the second year, as well as CEE, Center for Energy and Environment. So the HRA levy funds are included in this fund to acquire and demolish single-family blighted properties. So those are all the activities that happen with the development fund. Section 8, this is through the federal funding that we received for Section 8, and the funding from the HUD CARES Act grant was sufficient. And so the expenditure levy funds on this activity are not anticipated to be needed. Neighborhood, this is our rehab programs, and so it actually comprises 3 programs. So the CDBG Rehabilitation Loan Program, the Neighborhood Rehabilitation Loan Program, and the HELP Program, which is the Housing and Environmental Loan Program. CDBG Home Rehab budget includes grant funds, and it is a maximum of 80% AMI for participants or applicants or participants. And the program continues to see a low level of repayments of old loans. And then the neighborhood loan program is anticipated to be funded in 2022 with HRA levy dollars at $500,000 and repayment of old loans. And then the loans for this program are available citywide up to 100% AMI. And we'll go through later on about the rehab programs because I do have that on the agenda this evening.
Chair Lewis?
Commissioner Thorson.
Just a quick question on this one. It indicates 500,000. In the past, hasn't there been some additional funding?
There has.
And how much was that? How much of a cut, so to speak, are we seeing in that program this year?
So last year, or this year, we did receive $600,000 in strategic priorities funding from the city council, which we did not plan on, and it increased our eligible budget for loans to 1.1 million. So without the $600,000, with repayments, we are looking about $800,000 in that program in particular. And so it could be considered a cut, but with repayments and the $500,000 and then the program being paused and coming back up right now, we're pretty confident that we'll be okay in 2022.
So just to clarify, first of all, I have to indicate that I'm clearly disappointed with the city council's decision on that one last year. But so that this program has been funded at $500,000 in past years by the HRA?
Yes.
Okay, so we're at the same level of funding for the program in terms of the HRA as we have been both this year and past years?
Yes, I believe so, but Brian could add anything if I'm missing anything
Okay.
from that.
Yeah, so, and as Erica mentioned, we did not budget for a city contribution
Right.
this year, so that was a gift.
Yeah.
That we didn't expect. So, thank you, Ms. Beloga. And, but we have been, as Erica mentioned, we've been informed by finance and others that we should not plan on receiving strategic priorities funding next.
Thank you. I appreciate the information.
So,
Chair Lewis?
Yes, Commissioner
That
Beloga.
is not a done deal yet.
No.
The budget isn't done, and there will be at least one voice in council who will advocate for that continued funding. That's one of the most important programs for the city, in this person's opinion. The only thing that I'd really rather do is go back to the funding level of 2011 and 12, when we were doing $1 million a year.
in each program, yeah. Yeah.
Understood. The HELP program is anticipated to be funded in 2022 as a forgivable loan available citywide. So right now I'm looking at HELP pretty much having a set amount, but it would be coming out of the neighborhood pot. So in doing HELP, which would be forgivable loans for people that are really in need to get some things fixed on their home, and that meet those requirements and eligibility requirements, we would be taking that from the this neighborhood pot, but ultimately it comes out of the neighborhood loan program pot. So I want to be clear about that, because it doesn't come from CDBG funding.
And where does it come from in the past?
Neighborhood?
Oh, so that's not a change?
That's not a change.
Okay.
No, but I just want to be clear. All right, so the next fund is assisted rental, which formerly public housing. So this fund reflects the revenues and expenditures of the operation of the 20 HRA scattered site rental housing units that the HRA converted from public housing to project-based vouchers. And so with these units, we have increased rental income since the conversion going from public housing to project-based. But as well as this change has resulted in much better cash flow from the public housing program, and the higher revenue will allow for continued capital improvements on deferred items. Rental homes for future home buyers. This is the 21 single-family homes under the rental housing program, rental homes for future home buyers. And so the HRA escrows a portion of the household's rent to be applied to the purchase of their home in the future. And so we are proposing, and I'll get into it in just a minute, we are proposing to put funding into these, but this is the funds that we're looking at. And so on this summary, we have proposed for the general fund, general admin, $386,886 from the levy, and 1.831797, so 1.8 million from the levy to the development fund. Nothing for Section 8, as we have said previously. The housing rehab programs, 500,000. And then the assisted rental and the home rental have been sustained. And so we are looking at the rents for those programs. It's the rents that we would be putting to help continue to manage those programs. So that's how the levy is broken out, and proposed broken out for 2022. And then you can see here with the Section 8 vouchers, we are estimating, based on numbers that we have, $5,717,019 to continue to support that program for 2022. As you know, we do get that budget in May, June, that allocation.
Oh, for Section 8, yes.
Yes. So I went through that, but I can stand for any questions, comments, discussion, thoughts that what we think we should do with this proposed budget, as this is just review and discussion.
Okay, thank you. Administrator Coleman, are there additional questions, comments? Commissioner Olson?
Thank you, Chair Lewis. I didn't break in at that point. I didn't know how we were proceeding with this, but I'd like to go back to the development, the second category that you discussed, bottom of that page. And there's a such as Knoxville American Development.
Yes.
And one of the things that I think COVID and going for a period of time without a full-time administrator, we kind of lost in my mind, the momentum about the Gateway District.
Okay.
And so if there could be some examples of what would be another example of such as, but would be from the Gateway District, or, and if it's appropriate to delay this to a different meeting or something, that's fine too, but.
Yep. So thank you, Chair Lewis, Commissioner Olson. One of the things I'll point out is that its levy dollars will be spent on activities such as the Knoxville American. Part of that is the way those deals are structured. We owe payments. We are making a $500,000 payment to the developers of Knoxville American.
Okay.
So part of this statement is more so about our obligations and less about our opportunity to do other developments that would be in line with that district.
That's a major budget factor.
That's a major budget factor.
Okay, understood.
That does not negate that we are still managing the OHO, the Affordable Housing Trust Fund, and we are still working through potential projects that would be contributing to more of our affordable housing development, as well as market rate housing, because that can't stop. So we're still working on that.
And if I can just do a trailer here, appreciate this overview that you've given us, and we've got the support information to look in detail if we want, but it helped me to pull it together in my head, because budgets sometimes blur.
Yeah, I totally get it. You see a lot of numbers, so thank you. That was Brian that has put that format together, and I just used his format. Yeah.
Are there any other questions for Administrator Coleman? As this was just really a discussion item, I think we got some good questions out there. And we will then move on to item 4.2, which is the 2021 HRA Annual Plan Update.
Yes, thank you, Chair Lewis. So I wanted to bring this back before you. I know we just did it in March, but we haven't talked about it, and there's a lot of things happening. And so I wanted to quickly walk through this. So economic impact, education, and health. There's been a lot going on here. There's a lot of collaboration with city, state, and national leadership. We're doing a little bit more with national leadership around housing and priorities and proposal of bills and how they would impact our work or the city. We are also in talks with the Federal Reserve, so the Itasca project, which is a part of the housing focus that they have. I am on that committee, that board to meet with the Federal Reserve and grow that relationship, as well as others around the region in terms of housing and how we can leverage different relationships and funding. And then Bloomington Public Schools. This is starting to become a big one. Bloomington Public Schools does have a housing stability and homelessness district liaison. And so I had previously told you that we know of about 300 students that are experiencing homelessness. And what is happening with our coordination with Bloomington Public Schools is we are talking through how to work better together on stably housing students and families, and what does that look like in Bloomington to remain in Bloomington, and working towards sharing data to really get that information. So just growing that relationship, and then working with the Office of Educational Equity with Bloomington Public Schools. And so that's really expanding. They would like to do a more of a housing series, but we're looking into how do we do that, bringing information forward about housing and renting and ownership. So that is growing. And then public health, there is a health equity and renter health survey that was going to be done, but their lead person left. And so they've put that survey on pause until spring 2022. We are participating in that. our person left, who was also helping with that. And so that was Danielle Burkhofer, our office assistant. So she did move on to opportunities around her degree that she was fulfilling, so an internship with that. So we actually had both people kind of leave. So I've been in talks with the public health administrator, Nick Kelly, and so that survey is just on hold until 2022. But in the meantime, we are collaborating more when it comes to our property like Blooming Meadows South, and how public health is engaging with different people around the city and their needs, and housing keeps coming up. So there's going to be opportunities to coordinate better with our public health nurses, because they're just asking all kinds of questions about that. So there's a lot of coordination going on here. Yes.
Excuse me.
Yes, Commissioner Olson?
Thank you, Administrator Coleman. Part of the value of the health connection is that they are in homes, in a lot of homes
Yes.
that affect quality of life and housing issues and that kind of thing. So what is that what the survey is kind of aiming for, or?
So I saw some of the questions. I didn't see the final survey, and I think it wasn't finalized before both of the staff members left. But I did see a lot of the questions, and it did deal with the health, safety, mental health, but also like their knowledge or understanding about what their rights are around housing. You know, because it kind of all goes together. And so if you're having these health issues, but you're scared to report it, or you don't actually know what your rights are in reporting it and how it's supposed to be fixed, they were kind of getting into that. So I had a little more questions, because I didn't want public health to be perceived as an us versus them. So we have built relationships with our managers, our property managers, our property owners. And so I wanted to understand better. So we're pausing it. We'll talk more about that, because I want to understand better how are we coordinating with residents who are renters, but also property managers and property owners, and not picking a side, so to speak.
One of the values that I think is tremendous is that the model for public health is that they have workers that oftentimes are interacting one-on-one. And so it's just a rich source of understanding what life is like beyond necessarily the particular reason for coming. So I'm looking forward to what the results will be.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, engagement.
Chair?
Oh, sorry.
Yes, Commissioner.
Just an aside, you mentioned Danielle. Did you see her LinkedIn post today?
I did not.
You should look it up. Very glowing report of her time spent within the HRA and the friendships, and it's just very.
Where was that?
LinkedIn.
LinkedIn. Oh,
Yeah, so you want to take a look at
I
that.
will do
Nice,
that.
thank you. Yes, absolutely. Engagement and transparency. So we did.
I'm sorry, may I?
Yes.
Yes.
Can we go back to number one?
Yes.
In strategy, the advancement of economic priorities with state policymakers in particular. You're aware of the legislation that's going to be introduced in the coming session by district or Representative Elkins.
I am.
And I'd like to have some conversation amongst this group about that legislation.
Okay.
Because the essence of it removes local rule. And I'm personally not in favor of that. And while I'm limited in how many of my council colleagues I can talk to about that, the two that I have discussed it with are not excited about that either. And I'd like to have some mutual understanding among the HRA board and its members of what its position is with respect to that.
Understood.
That doesn't need to be today, of
No,
course.
do you know if there is a conversation planned at all for the council to, because that bill holds so much, the proposed legislation that we have seen holds so much, and it has started a lot of conversations. but it's a big planning document. Or I shouldn't say big planning document. It pertains more to planning. And so because people see housing, they're coming to the HRA, but it's been the planning manager that has been really helpful for me. And so I'm wondering, do you know if there's something with the council to have this conversation or deep dive?
Not as yet, but later in the year, the council does its strategic, or its legislative priorities.
Okay.
And that will certainly have that deep dive at that time, because we'll have to decide as a council what our position is with respect to that bill, or segments of it at least.
Okay, and then are you?
Because while there are favorable parts, being dictated on lot sizes and, building materials and, I think it's a real overreach because it does remove local rule.
And are you proposing that meeting, or that discussion, happen prior to council?
I
so
would
that
like us to, so we can give council
give a
some
recommendation?
input, yeah.
Okay, got it.
Because interestingly enough, when Steve was on the council, he was very pro-local rule.
Okay.
Chair.
Yes, Commissioner Olson?
Thank you. Administrator Coleman, I'm wondering if we have 4 organizations dealing with housing that are meeting on the 29th, is it? Or
Yes.
meeting? I don't know if it's appropriate to at least put that on the table in some manner.
So, real quick, the 29th is the ULI panel. I did want to bring that up. It's not at Civic Plaza. It's actually at Fire Station 1. And that will be the Planning Commission, HRA Commission, City Council, and Port Authority. What I do want to ask is, are the commissioners that are here, do you all plan on attending? Because I need to get a number back to, okay.
And I will.
I'm uncertain because
Yep.
the date for surgery for Marilyn's knee is,
Understood.
it's been moved 3 times in the past week. So.
Okay, all right. So, so there's that. And then 2, I can find out, because that will more so, what I understand, will more so be in the audience, and the panel will be by those that are out here doing development from different viewpoints. However, I don't see why that bill would not come up, because that's their work as well. So I can bring it back to, the coordination for this event has been Carla Henderson, the Community Development Director, and Shane Redline, the Port Authority Administrator. So I can bring it back to them.
Council did one of those, I don't know, 4 or 5 years ago, and there were some legislators there,
Okay.
and somebody from the U of M, I think, and.
I think they're invited.
Okay.
I do think
So-
they're invited by ULI.
Okay. So ULI is simply coordinating it, they're not doing all of the panels.
They reached out and contacted the panelists and invited them and set up the focus. It was just Shane and Carla have been more lead on that, and I've kind of just been told, like, yep, this is the date, this is what we're doing, so.
Okay, thank you.
And if I might give a counter to that, I think that ULI injecting their opinions to our discussions for very local items needs to be thought through prior to, doing that at that forum.
Okay.
Because at the end of the day, they're valued partners, they're very knowledgeable, but they're not living in Bloomington, is the best I can say.
Yep, understood.
And we want to keep Bloomington.
Okay.
It's changing and metamorphosing. Easy for you to say, maybe. But, that has to be at our control and our pace and our initiatives.
Yeah, understood. Thank you. So engagement transparency, we did release the annual housing report with ongoing tracking. We are tracking information. We're getting so much information. That's not a bad thing. I think we're just realizing how much is really going on. in housing and in the space and how it impacts everybody. But being able to continue with that ongoing tracking for so many reasons, one of them being, how are we structuring our programs and our services, but also are we able to meet the changing demographics, the aging population, the aging housing, like how, just getting that tracking information, which also the data helps us in leveraging other funding opportunities or other partnerships or collaborations. So that's a big one. The BHAT. So the BHAT, it's moving along great. It's a really good team. It's really been hard with COVID. It's really been hard in the virtual space. And so that's really a struggle for BHAT. And so far we have not had conversations about bringing BHAT back in person. And I think, right now in this world, we're dealing with COVID and more people want this hybrid type of situation, and we haven't really figured out how to crack that nut. So that's where BHAT is, but it's still moving. They're still meeting. They're still setting agendas. They're still engaging in conversation with residents and different community partners. So, and then collect, track, and analyze program participation. So with this one, even though this is the annual plan, we will be launching a customer satisfaction survey in 2022. And what we'll start with are our coordination and collaboration with Bloomington Public Schools and the families that participate in some of our programs. So that way we'll start there and how we can get increased engagement to actually complete the survey. So that will be more to come on that one. Yes.
Commissioner Olson?
Thank you. I'm not familiar with REPB.
Racial Equity Business Plan.
Oh, okay, thank you.
That was passed by the City Council.
Yeah.
And then we don't have a formal plan with Community Outreach and Engagement Division. What we do have is more of a guideline in how we engage them and on our different projects and different programs and engaging them. And we do reach out to them quite a bit. And with people experiencing homelessness, really reach out to co-ed because there used to be a human services department and they still have those skills and knowledge and connections. And we are seeing where we really need that now in the HRA. So for people experiencing homelessness and housing instability, this is starting to be a big one that we really don't have a space filled for that type of resources and services. And so we're engaging a lot with community outreach and engagement on this. All right. So as we get into housing creation, preservation, and rehabilitation, we are moving along. I have to look at the count. We are at 60 loans. Rehab loans. We are not, because the program's been paused. We are having under reviews the single family duplex standards. That's really with planning. But Mike Palermo, who is in the HRA part-time, is actually who's leading that review. And then maintain and enhance energy efficient housing programs. It's really our coordination with CEE and support for the improvements on our HRA owned properties. I was like, where's the words?
Madam Chair.
Yes, Commissioner Beloga?
And Erica, you are aware, of course, that council passed on Monday the time of sale enhancement
Yes.
for energy audit.
Yes. Yep. So on properties that are being sold, and then that building and inspections is got some plans on leading that. Yes.
Commissioner Lewis?
Yes, Commissioner Thorson?
And I don't know if this is the right place for it or not, but at one point we talked about revisiting the guidelines for the home improvement loans. I believe that now we cover things like landscaping, and with a smaller budget this coming year than we had last year, I wonder if we need to both revisit the kinds of improvements that we're allowing under the program. and maybe even the income, which we really put at a pretty high level, if I recall. Now, that might be a little touchier because I think it's a program that, everybody could use. But I think it's worth putting on the agenda that we look at some of those aspects of the program.
Absolutely. We'll discuss that later on this evening.
Okay.
On the prioritization of those loans,
Great.
those applications. We're already thinking of it.
All right.
Next, 3.2, integrate resources and partnerships, create and preserve affordable units. Update commercial redevelopment priorities. So this is underway, because Gateway is so big. And there has been the focus on, the Penn American District and then Normandale Lake. But there was not, well, I couldn't say there was not. There is a need to focus more on where our small businesses are. And one of the spots that keeps coming up is 90th and Penn. Yeah, and there's a lot of construction work being done over there. And so this is underway. This is with planning and the HRA, as well as Port Authority, as some say so, but then also as community development director. And so I was just getting some information to our community development director and updating strategic priorities, the performance, I can't think of the name, but it's the performance measures. There we go. Strategic priorities, performance measures, I just updated because this is one of the strategic priority goals of the city council. So this
We
is.
have too many acronyms.
I know. This is underway. Housing amendments, tracking and outreach. So this was some of the amendments that we did to the Opportunity Housing Ordinance already, and then we're reviewing it again as we are learning more information. One of the things that comes up is in allowing incentives and doing the OHO, how are we incorporating payment standards of Section 8? So we have set AMI standards, but the payment standards may not be at the AMI standards. So are we creating difficulties that we don't intend to create? And so there's been a lot more conversation around how the OHO is intersecting, as well as we did have a facilitated discussion with multiple departments and divisions around the OHO and its creation and moving forward and doing a checklist and things like that. So that's what that is. NOAA property review, tracking, and work group participation. So we are using our BHAT work group, but we're also looking at properties because Normandale Lake sold again. It did. And then we have the 90-day tenant protection ordinance that was in place, or that is in place. And so we are looking at that. And then ongoing projects management. So this is just the projects that we have for preserving affordable housing. So we have 8012 Oak Cedar, we have Lindale Flats, we have Penn Terrace, is it Penn Terrace? I think Penn Terrace that we are waiting to hear in November.
Penn Place.
Penn Terrace then. Yep, Penn Place is existing.
Okay.
Yep. That we're waiting to hear in November about Minnesota Management and Budget, if they got the LIHTC that they applied for, the credits. And then we are in discussions about 8200 Humboldt and a couple other properties that people have.
Rosa Development.
Rosa, so Rosa is in South Loop. Yep, so
And
Rosa.
that's Port, isn't it?
Yep, it's the port, and the Crown Plaza Air Apartments. So we come in kind of when it's the OHO or payment in lieu, so we know about it that way. But then we do have 700 American that we haven't moved forward with how we're going to develop that yet, and then 98th Street Station, which is the lot that we own that we did apply for $150,000 from the Met Council for Livable Communities Development Account, Transit-Oriented Development, Pre-Development Site Planning. Yes, I know. However, with all those words, we were recommended by the Community Development Committee for the full $150,000. And so we will hear about awards by end of September. And what that'll be used for is because that lot was purchased using right-of-way loan acquisition funds. It was held for possible interchange for 35. We have to do a road study. And so we're using that funding so we can finally do the road study to say, does it necessitate an interchange, which I believe it does not. But then also, what does it look like in terms of pedestrian, bike path, bikeway, things like that. And then getting on to the development, which will include housing. So all of that's happening. And then we ongoing support private market development. We do not restrict private market development by any means. Housing stabilization, this one has really been big in people experiencing homelessness. The hotel conversion study, that is still underway by planning, and that is, seeing, is it going to be single room occupancy standards? What does the code call for and what is allowed? And that's usually going to take a change to the code. We are working to prioritize 30 to 50% AMI unit development. Like I said, 8012 Old Cedar, Penn Terrace, both of those are prioritizing 30 to 50% units. And then the proposed conversations, we are always asking for 30% units. However, that comes with, they need more funding to fill the gap. And then temporary pandemic housing is over, technically. So that was a permit, a resolution passed by the city council that was tied to the executive order of the governor. And with the executive order ending, the temporary pandemic housing permit did end, and so that is ended. However, we are still seeing that people need housing due to the pandemic, and we don't have it tied to any type of order, nor do we expect to get any additional funding from the federal government. So we're looking at creative ways and collaborating to see who's doing what and talking with Hennepin County, since they have put out that they support housing. And so that's where we are. I think we're in the same place that a lot of cities and places are in trying to help residents. And then support services for seniors. So this gets into the home with senior community services, but also a brush with kindness. We have found that it helps more seniors. The Brush with Kindness program that I did bring before you to talk about is also something, it'll be more with environmental health, but what they are seeing is typically seniors that need the help, and that's why they're pushing for that capability. Great, and then maintain rental assistance offerings and expand where feasible. We went through that with our budget. And then lastly, operational efficiency. So definitely working on creating team cohesion supported by training and development, but also just breathers. I mean, COVID's hard, right? So just really having gatherings or, breaks and just talking with staff and finding out how, can help, different things like that. But I think that's probably the first thing to team cohesion outside of development is like, hey, how are you doing? Being able to see each other in the office and whatnot. And then enhanced organizational and governance structure for high quality service delivery. So we did update HRA board policies and procedure with our bylaws and whatnot. We can always review them again. That's as we navigate and work through. We do have a new application process that's looking to be rolled out, and the HRA is kind of the first that would be experiencing that, because we do have 2 seats that end in 2022 and 2021. So there'll be applications open, and then going through the new process. I will say that I have asked, that I understand it's a city process, but I have asked for more inclusion of at least the administrator, but also the chair, and possibly another board member when it comes to interviews or application review. I really was able to just say, I don't know that council knows what we need. And so I would like to have some input as a separate entity, as a separate board that is not under the city charter on how commissioners are picked. So then I want to jump back up to the high quality service needs assessment. So for this, it will be underway. Carla Henderson, the CD director, and Jamie Verbrugge, the city manager, have been leading the search for a, I guess, consultant to do a service assessment of how we do development as a city. And you can't do that without including the HRA. And so with that assessment, it would include how the HRA is staffed, broken up work, and does the work, because we have one position outside the administrator that's appointed to development. So it's a service assessment of that will be enrolled in with that, looking to be 6 months or less total for the assessment to be done. And I do know that proposals have been sent in by at least 2 different consultants, and they are being reviewed. I am included, I'm just not leading it with Carla and Jamie. For that one. And then strengthen financials and operating policies. So development procedures and process manual. This is happening more so with not necessarily like a big development manual. That's going to take a lot more. As I had to facilitate discussion, I learned that's going to take a whole lot more than what I initially thought. Just because so many departments are engaged in development and we weren't necessarily coordinating early on developments. So that's ongoing. We continue to have staff changes at the city, not just the HRA, but at the city. And so we'll see how we coordinate moving forward with new staff coming on. So that was a lot of information, but that was the whole update. Just know work is moving and staff is very busy. Are there any questions?
Yeah, and I want to thank you. That was a really thorough overview, and I really appreciated that. Are there any more questions for Administrator Coleman? Yes, Commissioner Olson.
Thank you, Chair Lewis. I also agree that it's comprehensive and very helpful to pull it all together. And as I was going through this, I was wandering back to, I don't know, 6 months ago or something. We had several meetings when we were working on our strategic plan. And are these the same groupings, categories that we had there? Okay.
They absolutely are.
Yeah. And I think we did a good job.
Well, I think you did too.
Yeah.
Thank you.
In other words, there were times when I was looking through the material that I was thinking, well, this is really the most important, but really the whole package is really needed. And I do have one question. In the column on accountability, I've been involved in a variety of organizations, and typically it ends up accountability is asking a person and to be or group or whatever. And many of them talk about policy.
Yes.
And that kind of thing. So can you talk us through, help me out in understanding how accountability happens when you label?
Absolutely. And so thank you for the question. The reason that accountability is tied to more of the programs, who's over program side, is because we're a team. And if we tie it to one person, we are stretching that one staff member to do that work. What is happening now is that there may be 1 or 2 staff that are taking the lead, but through the HPO process, we're engaging amongst each other. Just today, with the home improvement program, I may be bringing it forward, but that included me, Brian Hartman, Brian Derwachter, Stephen Schmidt, assessing, legal. So it ends up being the team that is coming together, and that's why it's not tied to a person, that we're engaging each other and having conversations to make sure that different viewpoints are heard and seen, and that people that are actually doing the work are able to say, yeah, that looks good on paper, but that may not work out that way.
I really like the idea of the team. I mean, it makes sense to do it that way. And COVID has really confounded a lot of things in our lives, but part of it too is how is the accountability by a group like this or a residents in the city, how is it kind of nailed down at some point in terms of, I mean, are there like goals for the programs or the goals for the outcomes of this teamwork that can be kind of
More clear?
digestible? Yeah.
We can work towards that. We can work towards that, making that more clear in a written format that we can go back to and also be able to share.
I mean, when I was in school systems, one of the things was to make sure that there was somebody that we could end up saying is going to make sure that the shepherding of the process happens. And that's the piece that I'm missing and was used to, but, and there's other ways to get it done. So I
Yeah.
look forward to how that will come out.
And I think for this, just as the way the organization is set up, it's the administrator. And then the tasks are assigned and coordinated. Like I work with Brian and Myra on a lot of different things. And that's how I'm informed and included. But it's really the administrator that's the lead.
Yeah,
Just
understood.
because- yeah.
And there's a good feel in my mind about the stuff that we deal with in our meetings, that we are making, as you said, I think the word progress, you know. And there's a process to get to it, and so it's an upbeat feeling. It's just, you know, sometimes burnout happens or whatever.
Yes.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions for Administrator Coleman? All right, well, thank you again for that very thorough update. Now, we will be moving on to new business, and our first item of new business, item 5.1, is approval of a memo of understanding with Hennepin County for the Foster Youth to Independence Housing Choice Vouchers. May we have the staff report, please?
Madam Chair, Commissioners, we're very excited tonight to bring forward to you for approval the memo of understanding for Hennepin County, which is the first step in establishing the Foster Youth to an Independence program in the city of Bloomington. We talked to you about this, I think, was it 2 years ago, maybe, somewhere in that neighborhood, and through a different amount of delays and setbacks and COVID and pandemic and lawyers, we are now ready to.
That's the hospital board.
Yes, we're ready to talk to you, well, HUD was in there too, but we're really excited to bring the MOU to you for approval so we can move forward with making an application for up to 10 vouchers. Just to remind you, that this is a special program and set aside of vouchers that HUD has created to serve foster youth who are aging out of the system or have aged out and are at risk of homeless. And it does have a service component to it. And Stacy Ray from Hennepin County here is going to be our partner, the lead for the county. And also there'll be 6 different service providers that will provide services to those youth. So we're very excited about this. This is a program that lasts for up to 36 months of rent assistance for those youth. If they are still in need of rent assistance at the end of that 36 months, we are going to update our admin plan at our next meeting to include a preference for them so they can pop to the top of the waiting list and receive a regular voucher if they should need that. So we'll be talking about that at our next meeting. But Stacy is here, I think. I'm excited you're here. That's been a long road, but she's here to answer any questions you might have about the program, the youth that are being served, and maybe frankly a little bit of the demand. Maybe you want to talk about that, Stacy, just about kind of the pent up demand for these vouchers and how now it's not only Bloomington that's going forward, it's St. Louis Park, it's MPHA, Minneapolis Housing Authority, and Metro Council HRA.
Yes, so thanks for having me. It was about a year and a half or 2 years ago I was here. I think it was one of my last in-person meetings because the county's got us on lockdown. We can't go in person. So this is my first in-person meeting again. So it's exciting to be here. So yeah, we are, in addition to Bloomington HRA, it's Minneapolis, Met Council, and St. Louis Park. And each housing authority has access to up to 25 of these vouchers for these young folks. So we're looking at, a massive impact to our young people in Hennepin County who can access these 3-year, basically Section 8 vouchers, or housing choice vouchers for housing in the private market. And it has been a lot of project management involving these 6 nonprofits who aren't getting paid any service dollars. This funding does not come with service dollars. It is only the dollars that the housing authority gets to administer the rents and the admin fees that you guys collect on that. So a lot of partnering with these community providers who are already serving these youth that they've prioritized, and trying to tap into the services and expertise of the community that's already offering this service to the young people. So we've got, I don't know if you want to know the 6 nonprofits. Sure. Okay, so we have Youth Link, the YMCA, Connections to Independence, Avenues for Youth, Oasis for Youth, and The Link. And 2 of those organizations target youth who have or who are about to age out of extended foster care. And then the other 4 organizations target those young people who are homeless or at risk of being homeless. And through the partnering with these 6 organizations, they have set the tone and created a prioritization kind of chart. It's really massive, and it's attached to the MOU if you want to see it. But they, in their expertise and identifying the youth that could benefit from this resource, knowing that there's way more youth eligible than opportunities that we have, they've created a prioritization of youth who they would refer to these vouchers. And it's really small.
It's really small.
It's in, basically, to kind of summarize it, they've identified 5 kind of groups or prioritization levels. So the priority 1 on the bottom, they've broken it down into a couple different categories. If you're homeless or at risk of being homelessness, those are different factors. Whether you are a parenting youth or expecting parenting youth versus non. If you have a history of exploitation, if they have experienced foster care in Hennepin County versus other counties. And I think those are the categories that they've kind of narrowed as the focus points of referral and prioritization. So those are all embedded into this very lovely chart that's hard to read.
But it is in your packet.
Yeah, it's attached to the MOU, because so in addition to the MOUs with the housing authorities, I've also enacted MOUs with all 6 nonprofits with the Hennepin County, just to make sure everyone's on the same page, and so that we all read this over and over and over and understand who's doing what and what's expected of the county, of the housing authority, as well as the providers themselves. That's kind of it I've been living, breathing this for the past couple of years, so ask me any questions. I'm sure I just kind of blurted out a whole bunch.
Do you have some questions?
I tried to expand my screen and I still couldn't read a lot of it well, but 2 that I was wondering about are the 2 squares on an angle or whatever at the top, in the peach color or whatever, and it looks like that's showing what, okay, that's like it's out of, they're not qualifying or something?
Well, they do. Well, so we're trying to, because we only have a finite number of these vouchers, we're trying to prioritize Hennepin County folks, young people who've experienced foster care in Hennepin County. Other communities are doing this across the state. Hennepin County is the first in the metro to be doing it. So it's not so much that those young people would never get served. However, if there's youth that have experienced foster care in Hennepin County and meet some of these other crucial points, they would be prioritized. This is not an itemization of who's eligible and who's not. Everyone on here is eligible, it's just a matter of who's prioritized over, if we have 10 openings and they have 25 people, who do they prioritize to send the referrals?
Makes sense. Thank you.
Sure.
Are there any other questions? Thank you so much for
Thank you.
giving us that information.
Madam Chair?
Yes, Commissioner Beloga.
Thank you. It strikes me that do youth from Bloomington get referred to Bloomington or from Minneapolis to Minneapolis? You know, there seems to be a continuity of surroundings and familiarity that, you know, moving someone who's from Brooklyn Center to Bloomington would seem to create a hardship on the person because they lose connectivity and understanding of things around them and the environment, so.
Absolutely. So we've discussed that in our meetings with our partners as well as, so we've convened the housing authorities with the HUD field office here, as well as the nonprofits involved, and that comes up. And I think, Brian, you might know more about this, but all 4 housing authorities have agreed to allow for the young people to port within the 4 jurisdictions. So hopefully, because we know a referral that comes in might not know, at their initial onset that they want to live in Bloomington, but Minneapolis is overseeing their FYI voucher. How do we work through those nuances amongst the housing authorities? And I think that's when the housing authorities all agreed, and you can speak more to that, Brian, than I can.
Sure. Thank you, Stacy, and thank you, Commissioner Beloga, for the question. And we did address that. One of the important recognitions is just what you said, is that if somebody has a support system and network and has established job perhaps in a particular community, just because they come up off the top of our list and is eligible for Bloomington voucher, we don't want to force them to move here if they're already established in Brooklyn Park, I think was your example.
Right.
So we would allow that person to port or take that voucher with them from Bloomington, and we would allow them to move that or remain in that city, and we would still support them with our rent assistance voucher there, and the other housing authorities have agreed to accept them. So we have that agreement amongst the 4 housing authorities that cover the vast majority of Hennepin County at this point. So
Excellent, good. Glad to hear that that's covered base.
Are there any other, yes, Commissioner Olson?
Just an observation and a question. With the 6, I'm quite familiar with 4 of the 6, and not so much with the other 2, but in terms of programs that go through existing government agencies, by whatever definition, is an important way for getting it to be implemented. But getting buy-in from the general public involves a certain amount of important connection with the public, and that's always a difficult thing. But like the Y and so forth, like have a lot of people, and maybe that's the way that it's happening. It's that it's getting the word out to people who are kind of kid-oriented because they're engaged, or members or whatever, and supporters financially of the Y or these other organizations. And like Oasis, I don't know if they've been able to keep operating their location at the mall or reactivate it, but I mean, it just seems like a lot of good programs sometimes have a lot of momentum, and then all of a sudden it hits the wall of public opinion. And so I just throw that out there in terms of how the planning has happened and how that element of making a program work gets attention.
Thank you, Commissioner
And
Olson.
I guess maybe if you were to say that these 6 organizations are aware of that and they already have connections with people in their mailing lists, newsletters or whatever, maybe that's the answer to that, I don't know, but.
Yeah, that's a good point. A limitation of this particular program is that there are no dollars that are, there's no support dollars to this. So all 6 of these organizations, fortunately and unfortunately, are using these vouchers for the young people that they're already serving. So it's really them leveraging the support services that they're already being paid for and targeting the young people on that prioritization who need housing, who would be a great fit for this voucher, and supporting them in housing with the voucher. So it's not, and hopefully, as we launch this, and I'm assuming it's successful, there's an ability to grow each year by 25, if we're at 90% utilization per housing authority. So the numbers can grow exponentially depending on the success of the program. And I'm hopeful that, after some time, we would be able to find some support dollars somewhere so that we can, to your point, publicize this a little more broadly, because as it is now, we're having to create a one-pager to fend people off. We have, since this planning has been doing, the staff of the county and maybe the HRA at some point will also be getting emails from people wanting to access this resource. And because it's limited, we just don't have the capacity. Whereas hopefully in the future, we can get to a point where we have service dollars and we can grow it and respond to the NOFA, which I would assume will come out again, so you can have like an actual, a set dollar amount and a set number of vouchers that you can access. But it's just future thinking, and right now we just gotta make this work.
First, and making it work will help naturally provide
Right.
I was going to say ammunition, but I don't like that image, but the content to make the public aware. Yeah, thank you.
Absolutely, agreed.
Chair Lewis?
Yes,
So,
Administrator Coleman.
thank you. So Oasis is one entity out of the group that is in Bloomington,
Yes.
correct? So I think this is an opportunity. I have yet to be able to sit down with Oasis for You and talk with their leadership. However, we do have the American Rescue Plan Act dollars of $250,000 that was allocated for homelessness response and prevention. And so one of the things that I had already broached was to speak with Oasis for You, because that's what those dollars are for. So there may be opportunity here to look at further support under those dollars, and especially focusing on youth that are experiencing housing instability and or homelessness, and some of it tied to exacerbation by COVID. So I just wanted to bring that up,
No, that would be,
because we do have that other piece, and Oasis is in Bloomington.
thank you.
Good to hear, thank you.
for that. Are there any other questions? Hearing none, we do need a motion. Is there a motion to approve the memo of understanding with Hennepin County for the administration of foster youth to Independence Housing Choice vouchers?
Commissioner Olson makes a motion that we approve that memo of
Thank you.
understanding.
Is there a second?
Beloga, second.
It has been moved by Commissioner Olson, second by Commissioner Beloga, to approve the memo of understanding with Hennepin County for the administration of foster youth to Independence Housing Choice vouchers. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, I would ask for the roll call vote. Ira?
Beloga.
Aye.
Lewis.
Aye.
Olson.
Aye.
Thorson.
Aye.
Motion passed 4-0 unanimous.
Thank you. And thank you, Stacy, again for sitting through the first half of our meeting.
Thank you very much, Stacy.
Yeah, and thank you for saying that.
Great to see you in person.
Thank you.
Yes.
And
thank
you're
you
more than
for
welcome to stick around, we love this.
Because it just gets better and better.
I think it's dinner time.
All right, thank you. Now moving on to item 5.2, new payment standards for the Housing Choice Voucher, Section 8, Rent Assistance Program. May we have the staff report, please?
Madam Chair, Commissioners, we are bringing forward to you a proposed increase in payment standards. So for several of our bedroom sizes. HUD recently published the new fair market rents for the Twin Cities metro area, and they are listed in the chart lower down in the item by bedroom size. Really just saw kind of modest increases in the FMRs. This was after last year's rather large increases in some of the fair market rents that we saw. But given our current state of our budget and funding from HUD, we saw quite a substantial increase this year, thankfully. We, as staff, feel we are able to, at this time, increase the payment standards, which is the subsidy amount, which determines the subsidy amount, for participants in the program. So in the chart in front of you, in your packets, we are proposing increases to the 0, 1, 2, and 3 bedroom sizes, with the largest increases being in the 1 bedroom size. This is the bedroom size that has had the hardest time with, we've had the hardest time keeping up with the market increases as they've kind of really kind of skyrocketed over the last several years. So by providing a $60 amount increase in that subsidy standard, we really hope to assist those families already in existing units and those looking to move or coming new onto the program. Again, this is a response not only to the new fair market rents, but also to the fact that we have a pretty healthy budget that we want to, and those funds can only be spent on rent assistance. We can't use those dollars for anything else, and we want to certainly spend them. And if we don't, HUD will recapture them from us. So it's a good position to be in, to be able to do this large increase by these bedroom sizes. Happy to answer any questions.
Yes. Are there any questions for Mr. Hartman? Hearing none, is there a motion to approve the proposed payment standards for the Housing Choice Voucher, Section 8 Rent Assistance Program, effective for August 1st? October 1st, 2021.
So moved, Commissioner Thorson.
Hold a second.
Thank you. It has been moved by Commissioner Thorson, second by Commissioner Beloga, to approve the proposed payment standards for the Housing Choice Voucher, Section 8 Rent Assistance Program, effective for October 1st, 2021. Is there any discussion? Hearing no discussion, I will call for the roll call vote. Myra?
Beloga.
Aye.
Lewis.
Aye.
Olson.
Aye.
Thorson.
Aye.
Motion passed 4-0.
Thank you. Moving on to item 5.3, funding availability for Veterans Administration Supportive Housing VASH vouchers. May we have the staff report, please?
Madam Chair, Commissioners, this is information only item. HUD has made it known this summer to housing authorities that Congress had authorized additional funding for the Veterans Administration Supportive Housing Program, or the VASH vouchers, and would award that funding based on, first of all, interest, and then based upon a formula after they receive letters of intent or letters of interest from those interested housing authorities. So this program works similarly to the foster youth to independence program that we just talked about, where we would work with a population of veterans who are currently homeless and or at risk of becoming homeless, who would be recommended through the Veterans Administration, and they would be paired with services. And that what the HRA will do is then will bring the Housing Choice Voucher for rent assistance to them. So it's, again, a combination of services and rent assistance to those who are either experiencing or threat of being homeless. By submitting that letter of intent that Erica signed in August, it just kind of gets us in the queue, and HUD will then allocate the VASH vouchers to those interested housing authorities across the nation. It doesn't mean, and then they'll come up a number that, oh, Bloomington's eligible for 10 or 25. So what we'll do at that point, once we find out that number, is determine what's the appropriate level of vouchers that we would want to accept. We may not want to take all of them. Right now, we're thinking that 5 would probably be an appropriate level. Just that, so the commissioners are aware, the population served by both these programs require a higher level of staff interaction typically. They need a lot of more time understanding how the program works, and they may experience issues that the HRA staff might need to get involved in during their tenure in their apartment. So we don't want to bite off too big of a chunk to start with, but when we get that notification from HUD, what the formula allocation is to us as a housing authority, then we'll make back a recommendation for formal approval of the funding request. Happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Hartman. Are there any questions from Commissioner Beloga?
2 questions. Well, this is the second sort of new program. What does this do to staff? Are we stretching staff?
Thank you, Commissioner Beloga. Yes. Staff, we are stretching staff.
We're not breaking?
We're not breaking, but we are stretching staff, which also all of this is in consideration with the assessment. Staff does have a lot in the way the caseload workloads are broken up, and so looking at how we can adjust that. However, I am so appreciative of staff and their willingness and their interest, because to serve youth and veterans, these are 2, very wide populations that just are underserved. And so I'm appreciative of staff's willingness and interest to understanding that they are stretched, but still interested in wanting to look into these programs. Now, we may not be able to just go full on with the programs, but to start and to learn and to understand and to get that feedback. So, yes.
Yes, and thank you, because there certainly is need out there. I'm a vet, so I relate to this group. And I may be overly picky with this next question, but in the, I think it's, the note, yes. In the 3rd paragraph, in the 2nd line, midway through, it says VA case managers may connect veterans with support services.
Yes.
It's, I'm only picking on that word may
Yes, you
rather
are.
than will.
Yep, so you are not being overly picky. We cannot force anyone. And that has been the one thing that has come up in the discussion that staff has had with other HRAs, with the VA. They can't force people to take part in these services. And so they may connect, they for sure will recommend. So that's that caveat there that you notice that is very accurate in how it's written.
Yeah.
And Brian can fill in anything.
And I'm all for giving a helping hand, but I think it has to be accepted. And that acceptance, in my view, and this is, without spending days and weeks in conversation like you all have on this, is that I would prioritize those who are willing to accept help to improve their lot in life, as opposed to those who don't for, priority in the voucher line, if that's.
And so with that, I will have to say that we're learning, because I'm not sure how much flexibility we have when we are referred the clients. It doesn't necessarily come in a batch. It's one client that may be referred. And so the expectation of the VA or whoever, or MACV, whoever we're working in coordination with, is to house that client.
And I know that MACV, for instance, has those. They require their people to, work their program. And so that was an example I was going to use.
Yep.
I'm glad you mentioned them.
Yep.
But you're acutely aware of it, and that was
Yes.
the reason I wanted to bring that word up.
No, we appreciate it. We appreciate your acknowledgement of that and your knowledge of it, because that's something that staff has definitely talked about. Because that's a part of stretching staff, is what does that look like with people that may not be accepting of the help that they are being offered.
Well, and I don't have the intimate experience, but, you know, from the literature that I read, there's more homeless vets than there are resources for them, and I suspect that will be the case. So if we can help move people into mainstream society out of homelessness, I mean, that's the real objective here, right?
Right.
And if we could parse those people to the ones who are willing to accept on a first case, you know, the assistance that will, you know, help facilitate that, that's my whole point of it. So I've gone on far too long with that. Thank you.
Is there any further discussion? Being that this was a discussion-only item tonight, we will now move on to item 5.4, and that is the Home Improvement Loan Program updates. May we have the staff report, please?
Yes, so, this program was put on pause, and since then, we've had many discussions, with staff, legal, others in the city, and so wanted to bring forward a few things. One, guidelines that are like easily digested one-pagers for the public. So, for staff and public, so that's what you're looking at here. So this is the HELP program, so Housing and Environmental Loan Program guidelines. The change to this one, and there's going to be a couple more, but the change to this one is increasing it from $2,500 to $7,500. It is the second change is making it a forgivable loan that does not accrue interest. Previously, it was a loan that accrued interest and was not forgivable, correct? Mm-hmm. If it's truly going to be HELP, and it's going to be for housing and environmental situations, making it a forgivable loan that does not accrue interest. However, it can only be used if the applicant is referred by City of Bloomington Environmental Health and/or Building and Inspections Divisions, and/or if they have red flag systems by a utility company that they can show proof of those red flag systems, and then going up to the process of being able to be an eligible borrower. One thing I want to highlight is this right here. Gross assets do not exceed $25,000, excluding one automobile per adult currently residing at eligible property. In talking with staff, one of the changes that staff recommended, those that actually administer the programs, was to increase the asset limit to $50,000. And so that'll be a change not only for HELP, but what you'll see is this eligible borrower information and eligible property is pretty much the same in the neighborhood and CDBG. And so changing that to $50,000 in terms of asset limit. And that is because it does get into, in the guidelines, what is used for assets. So what is not used for assets would be things like deferred compensation. So pension, 401k, things like that are not used. However, money market, savings, checking accounts, stocks, those are used towards assets, things that could probably be liquidated. However, $25,000, staff felt like that was really low, and that was not necessarily helping those that we're trying to help.
So in the past, this program, did it have an asset limitation?
No, it had no asset limit.
So this is a pretty big change. You're not asking for us to approve these tonight, are you?
I would like you to, but if you don't feel comfortable, we can come back just because the program's on pause. And so once the HRA is comfortable with changes and how we're proposing it and wants to approve it, then we would bring the program back up.
Okay. Because I'm seeing a lot of pretty dramatic changes from what we've had in the past, and I believe there's been a need. But a couple times I brought up the fact that we need to discuss these things.
Okay.
And I think a discussion to me means the board discusses it
Okay.
and provides advice to the staff along the lines of what we think needs to be done. And to have a document with this many changes put before us to approve this evening, to me, is both a backwards process, at least not in the way it's worked in the past, but also just an awful lot to think about. And I would like to see some comparisons to what we have today versus what's here.
Okay,
And I don't want to spend all night going back and forth on that necessarily, so.
no problem. We
I would
can do
like
that.
to, I would suggest we further, continue to go through the presentation, but I, for one, would like to see us not have to act on that this evening, given all the changes. They're pretty dramatic.
It's a lot of changes.
Yeah, it's a
Yep,
lot.
it's a lot of changes.
Okay, well, let's complete the presentation and then we can move.
Yep. And
discuss
so, the other, change that, it's not for this one, sorry. So that would be the changes for this one, for this help loan. However, for the home improvement loan, and so this is CDBG and neighborhood combined. I think because we did not have a separate application before, there was no need to separate the programs out because it's confusing to the public. And so we're not proposing separating it out at all. So that's not a change. So again, this gross assets would be $50,000, as we did not have an asset limit before now. We're proposing an asset limit. This difference here is this is a pretty big one. So neighborhood changed a few years ago to go up to 100% AMI. Well, the HRA, according to state statute, is supposed to serve those that are not adequately served by the marketplace and low and moderate income, and it actually calls out low and moderate income. And so I went back and forth with legal, and legal said if you're going to serve over 80%, you need to have a solid reason why you're serving them and to show that they are not being able to be served by the marketplace. So what we came up with was if you're over 80% AMI and under 100% AMI, you must submit at least one denial letter for repair and a rehabilitation loan from Minnesota Housing Network lender dated within 60 days of the application for an eligible property. Otherwise, legal was advising, don't go past 80% for any of your programs. So that's a big change. I do want to put that out there. It's not a change for CDBG. CDBG is 80% or below. We can't propose to change that. What's another change is borrowers age 55 or older are exempt from the equity limits. So I was proposing that we would have equity limits of 20% or $20,000, whichever is greater. So this is
And that's another major.
that's a major change, right?
Yeah.
And this is pertaining to the property that you are living in, right? Staff has asked that we not do an equity limit, but that we do a value limit. And so the value limit would be not to exceed current median home value for the city of Bloomington, as defined by the city assessor. So again, this is in discussion with staff, so we're not saying the equity limit, we're gonna say a value limit, so we're gonna remove that. So then that wouldn't be a change, but the value limit is a change. We did not have a value limit, an asset limit, and we went up to 100% AMI. So again, this is getting at those that would not be adequately served by the marketplace, which is the thought process around the asset limit. If you have $100,000 in the bank and you're applying for $35,000 loan, do you have other options? Because I can't say you do, but do you have other options? And so that's where the thinking's coming from in some of these changes. It's just our statutory authority and remaining within that.
What is the current median value home?
In Bloomington, it's $307,200.
So again, that's why I think we need a real discussion, a detailed discussion, but in thinking about it, there are a lot of people in those, homes that are of greater value than that are, seniors and others who, and the values are going crazy right now. I would almost rather see us have an equity
So you would rather have an equity limit, not a value limit?
I mean, or a value limit that's higher. I mean, there's so many people that, for whom, you know, either the improvements or unexpected repairs. And I know two people in my neighborhood or their friends in Bloomington who were surprised by a sewer issue, the connection to the street, which was about a $10,000 unexpected and expense, and not a very sexy thing to do to your house in terms of improvement. Or a fireplace that they, you know, been determined that it has to be rebuilt, and again,
Leaking carbon monoxide.
$10,000 or $12,000. So I just don't see that looking at the $307,000, I believe we need to assist people, just because they have an average priced home, they're priced out of this program that they've, you know,
Yep, so what I will say, because staff brought up the same thing.
Yeah.
What I will say is that, one, on a fixed income, as a primary source of income, they would be exempt from property equity limits. We could look at property value limits if we go that route, so either or, as well as 55 and older would be exempt from the equity limits. Second, we are not the only program that offers loans and or grants. And so there's Minnesota Housing, they have two different ones. There's Center for Energy and Environment, they have two different ones. There's the Weatherization Program, and there's Hennepin County. And so this is something that I kind of looked at and toyed with. Like, I do understand that we want to serve residents in Bloomington, but sometimes we can't serve everybody in Bloomington, and we need to prioritize those that need it the most and figure out a way to make a baseline.
Yeah, and I agree that the last changes we made to the program were too generous, so to speak. I think that's why I brought it up. There's a need for changes, and I mean, the fact that you could landscape your, you know, yard and, you know, but.
Commissioner Beloga, I saw your hand up.
You know, the equity part, or value part, my gut reaction is I'm not real fond of either of those.
Okay.
And it's because the ability to repay. And, you know, in Bloomington, I've met every other person you meet on the street who's a Bloomington resident has lived here for 50 years. I mean, one of the parades, the
Parade of
Heritage Days parades.
Okay.
There was a tent that was in operation by the Bloomington Education Foundation, and I manned that tent. And what it was, I had a map of the city of Bloomington, and people who strolled in, I would engage them and say, how long has the longest living person in Bloomington lived in this house? And at the end of the day, you know, then I give them a star in decade increments, so there were 5 color stars. I had more people over 30 years than I had under 30 years. So, you know, these are people, because they lived in this house, some of them, you know, it was their parents' house. They've lived in these homes when they were worth, you know, 5 digits.
Yes.
And today the market value is, you know, tripled or better on those properties through the years. They're still in the same basic financial condition, but the property, you know, so they're property rich, cash poor.
Yes.
And I'm looking at these kinds of programs as ways to keep our seniors who are able to continue living independently in their own residencies. And I'm going a long way of saying that I'm not sure that either a valuation cap or a equity cap would work for them, because through the years, I know that that generation, having their home debt-free was, you know, an exceedingly strong motivation to pay off that mortgage.
Yes, I agree, which is why 55 and older was exempt from
By
the
the-
equity limit. However, previously, the change that we're making here is we required an equity match. So if you needed to borrow $35,000, you needed to have $35,000 equity in your property. And if you did not, you could not meet the minimum requirements. So there were still people that we weren't helping, but if we make a program that's broad, where we have no limits to help the seniors, then we're gonna get other people that have other means, that we're gonna take the money from the seniors.
Yeah, and so I'm saying all this because I think there's a lot of points of view that need to have discussion amongst the members here before I would at least feel comfortable moving forward. And I'd almost suggest, because of the length of this, that we have the better part of an agenda for that.
Okay, I can do that.
So, I mean, that's just my thought.
Well put. I mean, you did a better job than I of explaining some of why, but you're knocking on doors too, or have been. So you've got an extra word in there, by the way, people over 55 who are.
Oh, yeah, I do.
So the who
Yep, the who is a
confused me.
typo.
So people over, they would be under the one scenario exempt from the property equity limits, but not necessarily the home value limit?
We could talk about that. That's what I'm asking.
And that's.
Yeah.
That's what I'm
that was
asking.
part
We
of
could
it.
talk about that, like we
Yeah.
can set that.
Yeah. The only other comment I'd make, and it is, it's definitely in a program for assistance, and I agree that we want to make sure we're not assisting people who don't need assistance, and that's why I think there's a lot of good, changes, that we need to make some changes. But we also viewed it in the past we've discussed this each year, and the board has passed on our recommendations as a motion. I hate to lose that, as a side comment, I hate to lose that ability through the process to each year reevaluate what the current needs are and approve a program. But I think we have also viewed it in the past as a kind of a neighborhood improvement program, in the sense that a lot of times we have a targeted program, and then we have a general program in the city. And it always amazes me how, when one or two homes make an upgrade, which I think for a lot of seniors, it gets really hard to do because they start to worry about their financial future. But when you see one or two people making an upgrade, a change, an improvement, then it carries
ripple effect.
forward.
Yes.
And I think that's always what's been the best part of these programs. You're sort of seeding some change. And the other thing I would say, and again, just for feedback on, as we go back and as we discuss this as a board in the future, the fixed income, I think we also, I mean, just from the standpoint, and I realize that, people 55 and older are excluded as currently drafted. But I don't think by fixed income, I assume you're talking retired or?
No, it's not just retired, it's disability.
Okay.
So you could be under 55 and be on a fixed income and own your
Right.
own property.
But I think that excludes large numbers of people, both prior to COVID, but especially after COVID, who are at an age where their earning power, they're maybe on a second career because, for whatever reason.
They're stagnant, they're not able to
Very
move up.
Yeah, it's almost, it's not a great position to be in, and people are, finding themselves in their 60s working two jobs or something like that. And so there again, things like asset and value are not helping to serve those needs. Stagnant is a great, term to put it at. You're essentially on a fixed income.
Yeah.
And yet you still have to go in and work, 40 hours a week. So those are the kind of concerns I have about some of the changes.
Then I think I would suggest what I'm hearing, because we need to kind of bring this to a close a little bit. This sounds like we need to table this item
Yeah, table it.
to another meeting. So I would need a motion then to table this item.
So moved. Okay.
Did you have, well, we'll have a discussion. Okay. All right, so,
I would move to table this item.
All right.
And I would
Commissioner
ask that what we come back to is to discuss this as a board, kind of fresh. Here's what we do today, here's what we're trying to do. Rather than another permutation of something that's given to us to react to, I think that we need to talk through the basics.
Talk through the basics and
I mean, there can be a
comparisons.
combination of that, but,
I can do
you
that.
know, I think it's helpful to have something before us, but I also want to make sure we're not just approving something brought to us, but they're really discussing this.
But we would still need something before us, I think, to work from.
That makes sense. I can do
A
that.
framework.
Yep.
Chair Lewis, I would second that motion.
All right, so it has been moved by Commissioner Thorson, second by Commissioner Olson, to table this item, which is to approve the resolution approving Home Improvement Loan Program Procedural Manual, Home Improvement Loan Program Guidelines, and Housing and Environmental Loan Program Guidelines. Is there any discussion of the motion at this time?
Chair Lewis, just wanted I mean, the discussion we've had is enough for tonight, but it really has brought out quite a few issues. And one of the things I think Commissioner Beloga used the phrase ability to pay, or maybe it was you, Commissioner Thorson, but that can be a real can of worms. And one of the things that came to mind is when we end up being upset in some way, when we know a particular person has some kind of resources to take care of it, but they want to come to the government instead, is family members. You know, if there are wealthy children or whatever, and I'm not suggesting we go there, but all I'm saying is that I think the more that we think through different scenarios, and we'll never get it perfect, but I think
Okay.
it illustrates the need to have this
All
meeting.
right, well, and I think here again, that's why we're tabling this, because what
Yeah.
I'm hearing now
Yeah.
is a discussion
Yeah.
that we want to have when we bring it back
I just wanted to
forward.
put that particular
Yeah.
thing on the table.
So this would be a good thing for people to think about this. So we
I'll bring it
move
back
forward.
with supporting information of what we're trying to achieve, who we're here to serve, and what is the comparison of changes proposed and why.
Good, all right, so it has been moved and seconded to table this item. May we have the roll call vote, please?
Beloga.
Aye.
Lewis.
Aye.
Olson.
Aye.
Thorson.
Aye.
Motion to table the item has passed, 4-0.
Thank you. Now moving on to item 5.5, Blooming Meadows North and South First Amendment to Declaration. May we have the staff report, please?
Yes, thank you. So what this is that Blooming Meadows North is the new building. Blooming Meadows South is the existing building. Blooming Meadows South has a community room and pool. Blooming Meadows North has more of like a technology educational room, and a couple of different amenities like that. This is an agreement to say that they can work, residents at each property can use the different other properties' stuff. This has to come before us because it changes the declaration of reciprocal easements, covenants, conditions, and restrictions. And so that's why it's coming before you today. But basically, it's allowing residents of Blooming Meadows South to use Blooming Meadows North amenities, and residents of Blooming Meadows North to use Blooming Meadows South amenities. There's no money changing or anything like that, just changing that declaration.
Pretty straightforward.
Yes. I was trying to figure out how to write it, but that's what it is.
Are there any, thank you for that. Are there any questions for Administrator Coleman? Hearing no questions, is there a motion to approve the resolution approving consent to First Amendment to Declaration of Reciprocal Easements, Covenants, Conditions, and Restrictions for Blooming Meadows North and Blooming Meadows South housing projects?
I'm happy to make that motion.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second, Thorson.
It has been moved by Commissioner Beloga, second by Commissioner Thorson. to approve resolution approving consent. I'm just going to make it short, the Blooming Meadows North and South First Amendment to Declaration. Is there any discussion? Hearing no discussion, can we have the roll call vote, please?
Beloga.
Aye.
Lewis.
Aye.
Olson.
Aye.
Thorson.
Aye.
Motion passed 4-0.
Thank you. And moving to item 5.6, home buyer mortgage assistant grants. May we have the staff report, please?
Yes, so we have had conversation about a down payment assistance program and funding through American Rescue Plan Act dollars. And City Council approved $250,000 for a down payment assistance program. I had talked to you previously and had said this program will be set up as a 0% interest deferred loan at 80% AMI or below, to be administered by nonprofit organizations that have experience and are CDFIs. However, with ARP guidance, and as we try to understand it, and believe me, it is a lot from the US Treasury, these dollars cannot be used as loans. They must be grants. So this is the change and why it doesn't say down payment assistance program. As you've seen in our budget, the HRA does not have money to fund a down payment assistance program this year, this coming year, 2022. However, in the information that I provided and the research that was done, I really didn't have information on what Bloomington needed. I had information from the state level, from the regional level, from the national level, but not Bloomington specific. And so I'm proposing that we do a home buyer mortgage assistance grant program funded through the American Rescue Plan dollars, and using the guidelines applied by Treasury for the use of this funding, which means it must be a grant. The grants must be, awarded, used by December 31st, 2024. And that money must be forgiven by December 31st, 2026. So, yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. So with that, that is why I am proposing to use the funds this way. And that staff would monitor the activity and the usage of funds and collect the information. Zip code, where are the people coming from that are using the program? Zip code of where they're buying the property. How much is the property that they are buying? What is their background information? Is it a female head of household? What is the type of mortgage they're using, if they have one? Is it conventional? Is it FHA? Like, starting to gather information to inform what a down payment assistance program should look like. Also, how much do they need? I'm still saying up to $10,500, but we may look and see the data and say, oh, they don't even need, according to this data, that's not the number people need. They need only up to $7,500. So use this as an opportunity for information gathering. However, with the new procurement policy of the city of Bloomington, because the amount is $250,000, we are required to do an RFP for the organizations to administer the program, even if they're grants. So we can table this as well, but I wanted to bring it before the HRA board, because what happens at city council is that it needs to go to city council and be a consent item to transfer the funds to the HRA. And what I did not want to happen was I go to city council to transfer these funds and the HRA has not participated, acknowledged, had discussion or anything about all of these things that are happening. That's why it's still here today. But it's totally different than what we talked about. And the thought I have would be to possibly, in 2023's budget cycle, request strategic priority funding for a down payment assistance program. But we will see how this grant dollars get spent when we can finally get it off the ground. So it's up to you all if you want to just discuss it or if you want to actually pass a resolution creating this one program, because it's not going to be a program that continues. It would just be for the ARP dollars.
Thank you. I will open it up to the board. What do the commissioners feel about this? Is it something that you would be comfortable doing a motion to move forward, since it's almost more of a study of what the program would be? Or do you want to table the item
We have more discussion.
and have more discussion about it?
I would suggest go.
Thank you.
Commissioner Olson?
Chair Lewis, the wording of the language to recommending creation is really generic.
Yeah,
And so I think, we've talked about it, I think enough that I would be inclined to say that it would be worth doing that generic motion.
Kind of.
I'm not going to make it at this
Generic.
point, but.
so it's very generic because the HRA does not have the ARP dollars and we're not getting the ARP dollars. This would be really a city program because the ARP dollars are allocated to the city. And so the HRA is only recommending to the city council that, yep, based on the information that the U.S. Treasury has provided, we support and recommend city council, you create this. So that's very confusing with ARP, I'm sorry. But that is why it's so generic.
Chair Lewis, I guess I would recommend we table or postpone this until we have further information to make a decision. Sounds like there's a lot we're still trying to figure out, which is understandable.
And I would be comfortable with that too. Commissioner Beloga?
I'm sort of stuck on that RFP.
Yes. We have to do a request for proposals for the organizations that would administer, because according to the new procurement guidelines that are being rolled out, what the nonprofits would receive would be an aggregate amount over $10,000 each. So what this gets into is, I have kept it the same as what we discussed in the down payment assistance program. And proposing up to $10,000, $10,500 for down payment for that mortgage assistance. But to the nonprofit organizations that administer, they would get a fee of $1,200 per closed grant filed. And because that total, splitting $250,000 down the middle, would be $125,000, and if they did at least 10 of those grants, they would surpass the $10,000 threshold, then the city finance says, you gotta do an RFP.
So can if the city does an RFP, and I'm parsing here, the HRA, can they be a respondent to the or to the RFP?
We could, but I'm not looking for, because staff is stretched so thin, I'm not looking for the HRA to actually administer this program. I'm looking for nonprofit organizations to
And
do it.
for a one-time
Yeah.
thing, this is a good thing to
Yeah.
take outside.
Yeah. But we could, yes. to
I'm
answer
just
your
having a
question.
hard time still wrapping my head around that RFP thing.
Yeah.
But, okay, I'm over it.
Yeah. But this sounds, again, a good reason to table it right now, because there's a lot of questions that are being generated.
Yes.
So do I have a motion to
There is a
take,
motion on the floor by Commissioner Thorson.
okay, and second by, is it,
Was not seconded.
I'll
is
second.
there a second? All right, so, motion by Commissioner Thorson, second by Commissioner Beloga, to table the item to approve resolution recommending creation of home buyer mortgage assistance grant program by the city of Bloomington. Is there any further discussion?
Chair Lewis, just one question. Administrator Coleman, is there a timeline and liaison to the council? Is there a timeline in terms of how realistically, if we want to have our input into it, we need to act?
Thank you, Chair, Commissioner Olson, for the question. I would say probably by October, I have to understand what the process is to release an RFP and then get it approved. And I don't want the board to miss out because I do want to move, I did do a scope of work already. And so I do want to move forward as quick as possible with an RFP. So I would say by end of October,
So this could be on our next meeting?
it could be.
Okay.
I have to look at that agenda.
Yes, Commissioner.
Quick question, it was sounding to me, that maybe there's something I'm not following, but it sounded to me like your gut feel was it would be most logical as a 2023 program, not a 2022.
For the down payment assistance?
Yeah.
Yes.
But no, okay.
But that's if we can get this rolling.
Yeah.
To get the information, because if we don't get this rolling to get the information, or it's not used very well in 2022, I don't have the data to make the request
Yeah.
for 2023, and then we're looking at 2024.
Yep.
And it has to be spent.
These dollars have to be spent by December 31st, 2024, which, the understanding that I have is that the city could allocate the funding to different priorities that still align. And therefore, if the funding's not being spent, we could possibly lose
Or reallocate possibly.
or reallocate.
And then what was the, and forgiven by 12/31/26, right?
Yes, so according to the Treasury guidelines, everything has to be expended by 2026, but it needs to be allocated, committed by 2024.
Thank you.
More discussion at another meeting. All right, is there any other discussion? Hearing none, could we have the roll call vote, please?
Aye.
Lewis, or Beloga.
Aye.
Lewis,
Aye.
Olson. Thorson,
Aye.
to table this item.
Table this item.
Pass 4-0.
Thank you. I know. Getting tired down there at the end.
Yeah.
Low blood sugar down here.
All right, well, we're almost done. Discussion item 6.1, Commissioner questions and answers. Is there anyone have any more?
Chair Lewis, I shouldn't sit so close to you, I guess, but
I think Commissioner Beloga just left. I'm sorry.
No, I'll be back.
And it's just a simple issue. Administrator Coleman, oftentimes you talk about staff. I mean, it's oftentimes in our agendas. That staff have talked about this and so forth. And to begin with, I was thinking it was just HRA staff, but I think I've come to understand, and I don't necessarily have a problem with this, but if maybe you could give some kind of an idea of which staff. I mean, like somebody from, you talked about legal issues, so I mean, it's apparent that somehow or another, people who work in this building would end up connecting with each other about it. Was there a legal issue, and if so, what do we need to do about it, for example? Or environmental health. I mean, we've been talking about that department or whatever it is, and so forth. So I don't know, maybe it's my simply saying that and kind of giving an answer to my own question is all that's needed, but it's just something that kind of, I think procedurally, maybe we just get, particularly with new people coming on board, that they get understanding early on about what is meant by what is that.
Yeah. So just,
involvement. I mean, I think
That
it's
makes
a healthy teamwork kind of thing. I'm not dissing it at all.
Yeah. No, that makes sense. I think previously it has been more, like in the past, it has been more HRA staff when referencing staff. But with me, it is more HRA staff and community development staff. So assessing environmental health, building inspections, planning, Port Authority. Really conferring with them a lot, especially as I have regular check-ins with the managers and information sharing. So then it does become more than just the HRA staff.
Yeah.
And when I say legal, it's usually our legal. It's usually our general counsel.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
Any other comments from the commissioners? Hearing none, I'm going to move to number 7. Do we have a motion for adjournment?
So moved.
Commissioner Olson, seconds.
Thank you. Motion by Commissioner Beloga, second by Commissioner Olson to adjourn the meeting. Myra, may we have a roll
Beloga.
call vote?
Aye.
Lewis.
Aye.
Olson,
Oh, aye.
Thorson.
Aye.
If we drag it out for 2 seconds, the meeting is adjourned at 8 PM.
Yes.
I won the bet.
There we
Well,
go.
And
it's
you had-
8 PM on the.
It's 8
Will
PM.
you make sure you stop the recording?
Yes.
Thank you.
Good meeting, guys.
Right. I can pull Jack
We'd ever
Logan.
be done.
Yeah.